Cześć, dzień dobry, and welcome to our new show, Polished, the show all about Poland. My name is Steve Campbell, and I will be your host throughout this upcoming series. I first visited Poland almost 20 years ago and immediately fell in love with the country. I've been fortunate enough to spend a lot of time there over that period and build a lot of close friendships, business relationships, and had an amazing amount of opportunities presented to me through that love of Poland. I've really enjoyed watching the transformation of the country from what was a communist backwater to what is now a fully developed and flourishing modern nation. Poland is currently experiencing rapid development and economic growth, boasting one of the highest GDPs in Europe currently. But here at Polished, we've all got Google. We don't want to talk numbers. It's pretty boring. We want to go out there and we want to go and have fun, and we want to go and meet people and see what's actually happening at the coalface of Poland and Australia. Most people don't realise it, but Australia actually has a lot of very successful Polish people who have set up thriving businesses here. We're going to go out and we're going to meet some of them. We're going to meet some of my friends. We're going to dig into what led them to their pathways to success and what projects they're building for the future. So, as they say in Polish, zapraszamy do Polski. Let's go and explore Poland. And a special thank you to our dear friend Rafał Jarosz from the Polish Trade and Investment Agency, who's made this series possible. Enjoy. Welcome to Polished, the first episode, and we are very, very fortunate to have the Consul General of the Republic of Poland, Mr. Piotr Rakowski, as our very first guest. Welcome, Piotr.
Thank you, Stephen. It's a pleasure, and I'm happy to host you in my humble premise. There is a question which very often I've been asked by especially the students in the Polish weekend schools. You know, Mr. Consul, what's the difference between you and ambassador? And I always make this distinction to try to make it simple. Basically, our ambassador in Canberra is responsible for the bilateral relations between Poland and Australia with different areas, while myself, I'm responsible for the Polish citizens, either the Polish diaspora living here or tourists or visitors coming over. And we provide the services. Obviously, we maintain certain relations with Australian counterparts. I have my consular area relatively big, I would say, because I cover the whole continent apart from ACT, and I have still also 5 Pacific states. So it's relatively big dominion. But nevertheless, so we have certain ties. When we promote cultures and trying to show Australians either in New South Wales or somewhere else with our support, that's also our role. But the main task is to provide the service. So we produce passports, we assist our citizens with different legal matters in terms of, mortgage. I personally, for instance, can be a master of ceremony when it comes to the marriage under the Polish civil law to the Polish citizens. We deal with consular assistance. There's something wrong, earthquake or bushfire, and our citizens either living here, they also can, as being also very often having also Australian passport, we might have assistance also from the Australian government and relevant services. Obviously, we don't have army or resources to support, but nevertheless, we support the Polish diaspora and any other Polish citizen that needs help. What else? We help with the different documents. But apart from that, we also try to support different activities that the Polish diaspora here in Australia is engaging with. So, for instance, the issue of Polish weekend schools that I mentioned. We try to sustain the Polish language because I personally believe that's a very important part of identity, of culture. I know it's difficult very often, and with every generation, the ability to speak your, let's say, the language of your grandparents is getting more and more difficult. It's not only the issue of the Polish diaspora, it's with every diaspora in the world. But nevertheless, this is one of our roles to support, because language is also the part of transmission of culture and dating, history, habits, folklore, whatever. We also try to support Polish clubs, Polish associations, Polish, cultural initiatives, which I either directed to the Polish diaspora, so then it's, let's say, within the Polish family, but also showing Polish culture to Australians. And last but not least, we try to recently, actually, when I arrived last year, I'm here for 13 months, which I know it's a cliche, but I know how it happened. It's already 13 months. And it's a fascinating journey here in Australia. But we're also trying to engage more and more in, let's say, overall social economic cooperation with Australia, trying on one hand, and it's our primary task, to support Polish entrepreneurs or Australians with the Polish heritage that are interested in getting more and more, having more and more business relations with Poland. And because we also think that that's another important part of activity. So that's basically our portfolio. But summing up, embassy, ambassador is for bilateral relations, political, economic, on a very broad scale between the nations. I'm responsible for the Poles, for the Polish citizens, and provide the service for them.
And I think you're a very good example of living what you've just said. You were in Perth last weekend. In a couple of hours, you got a flight to Melbourne for the Polish festival. Been in Sydney all week, and you've certainly been a very, very big supporter of the Polish Australian Chamber of Commerce. You've come to a lot of our events. The fact that we're sitting here today is testament to that fact. So it's great to see someone that's living and breathing their ethos. And tell me, you mentioned trade with Australian businesses. Do you facilitate any trade from Polish businesses looking to do business in Australia?
Well, that's something which is first of all done from, let's say, strategic overall topic by our embassy, supported by our trade and investment office here in Australia. We, as a consulate, first of all, just started like a few months ago, formally trying to change a bit the structure to have someone to deal with the economic issues. We don't have a team yet. We don't have a big resources dedicated to trade. So our role is more or less supportive, and also going, let's say, beyond trade, cooperating, like you said, with Polish Australian Chamber of Commerce. But as a goal, I would like to have a bit more staff. And, you know, the interesting thing when I've noticed when I came over here, that majority of the European Union countries, consulate generals here in Sydney, not mentioning other like-minded states like US, Switzerland, New Zealand, UK, they have relatively big trade and investment sections within the consulate. Very often the Consul General is / trade commissioner. We were not so far let's say, equipped with such a capacity, although the policy of my government and the policy of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs have changed with those two, and we now try more and more to engage consulate and consulate general into this area of activity. So we are just starting up and it's an initial phase, but I'm strongly confident that we should. I mean, it's a huge city with a big potential. There's lots of businesses and growing interest. I mean, even the PACC is a very great example that from, let's say, effective but loose networking initiative, now it's a formal Chamber of Commerce with, if I'm not mistaken, 250 or more members, and it's still growing. So we should also be able to address that. So I can't give you a very concrete examples how in practice we support trade, because we actually haven't been supporting trade by now, but nevertheless it's our initial and beginning of the road that I would like to continue.
I certainly, from my perspective, there's a lot of potential, I think, and I know PI, the Polish Trade and Investment Agency, the two people that are based in Australia, they do a wonderful job, and their workload is enormous. And yes, from a chamber perspective, we try to support that, and you discussed how you try to support that as well. But I think there's a lot of undertapped resources and potential for bilateral trade and relations between the two countries, definitely.
I agree, and I remember that we were supporting. Our embassy had the lead, obviously, but we were supporting recently two initiatives. First of all, there was a Polish delegation attending IMARC conference, and also being in Perth, because for obvious reasons in this, and mining industry. But before that, we have this big space conference as well. We have also Polish delegation coming over, both business and governmental level. So I fully agree. It's growing, and that's why I believe that we also should be a bit more competent and equipped in order to support this. Obviously, with one Consulate General covering whole the territory with the number of issues, I have to prioritize certain things, but with every administration, it's a gradual process. So since we started, maybe I will have one more people in the future, and then maybe a bit more small section, and then working together with the embassy and the trade and investment agency, we can do even a bigger change with this big country.
So on that note, tell me, what would you like your posting to be remembered for? What's the big aim, taking into account that you have a set amount of resources, and is there something big you want to achieve before your posting concludes?
I mentioned that I have two strategic goals for my term. One is youth, and the second one is Polish language. Polish language, starting from the letter, because as I said in the beginning, it's the transmission of culture, identity, history, whatsoever. We are, I wouldn't say at the losing ground, like I mentioned in the beginning, that with years there's a normal process that language is going to, let's say, be spoken in a smaller number of homes, but we have to do everything to make it attractive and sustain. So that's one of my goals. The second is youth, with the second, third, fourth generation, everything changes. Look at our families. But when it comes for the Polish families, and then they having kids and the kids, they are more Australians, which is normal, living here, have friends, and we should offer them something that still sustaining the language it would be attractive. And I think we should look for additional incentives, additional, I don't know, items that might make them think that it's really cool, maybe that's the proper word, to have the language. Apart from being Paul, apart from being able to speak to maybe grandparents living still in Poland, and go there and being able to speak with the language, I don't know, at the disco or in a bar. And this somehow brings me to my third goal, which I didn't mention when I was coming over here, but I realized when I get posted that I should make, and it's again also with our overall strategy to show Poland as developed, rich, modern and forward-looking country. To find or just to have a feeling that after, let's say, 4 years when I will be leaving, I made the consulate and then the government and let's say Polish administration also attractive. That it's a modern, vibrant place that apart from providing professional service for our citizens, we are also a symbol of a certain change, because I think that's somehow connected. Well, I acknowledge the history. I acknowledge the fact of number of wars and casualties and the political changes and people that were forced to emigrate from Poland, and many of them find asylum and home here in Australia. But I think remembering this, we can't limit ourselves and just promote or make a driving force only this aspect, because it's not appealing to the youth. Youth, like everywhere else, I just look at my son, is they're just looking their own way, and they will be looking for, that's also normal, for their goals, for their future. And history often is not that important for them. So we should be smart and try to smuggle on one hand the history, but on the other hand to show something else. And then this brings me to something you mentioned. We were discussing the Polish Australian Chamber of Commerce, and it's something I think it's great to acknowledge and to note that recently the president of the chamber and myself had the pleasure to sign a declaration of cooperation. We both recognize the issue of the Polish language, the culture, and heritage, and so on and so forth. But then we will be working together to allow the best how do we call this exam?
Or the HSC.
HSC exams. So the best ones would have the internships or a traineeship in the companies that are members of the chamber and have certain Polish links or the ideas or plans developed with the Polish partners, and they would know that the language, apart from different strategic goals, as I said, it's also useful because we can have a partner internship, and then maybe we can work in the companies for the future, and then it's useful to have this language. Because, as I always say, they sometimes the youngsters they tell to me, Consul, why do we need Polish? You know, we can have our mobiles translate everything immediately, then we can negotiate in English. And I said, you know, but you never know. Sometimes there will be no resources, and your mobile wouldn't work. And it's not only the issue of translating, because if you want to just to translate, okay, you can do it. But when it comes to the, and you know best, to business negotiation whatsoever, it's not the only issue that you understand what the partner says. It's an issue of context. It's an issue of making someone confident. It's useful to make business with you. And then when you know a certain also cultural context is the context or jokes, then it's easier. And you never know what future would look like. You may end it up in Poland, and we encourage the youngsters with the Polish origins to come to Poland, either to study or to work for some time. And you can see something else in your life. So you never know. And once you know one language, or the second language, and the third language, it's not the only issue that you're bilingual or multilingual, but your brain works better. And your ability to adapt to the changing environment is bigger. So, and since you have an advantage because you're coming from the Polish origin family or one of your parents is Polish, just take advantage. You know, it's easier than just starting from the scratch.
Very true. You grew up in Malbork in the north of Poland. Let's talk about your story. How does a young Piotr Rakowski from Malbork find his way to Australia?
When I arrived here, it's a very good question. When I arrived here and I started to meet lots of Polish people and being acquainted, they always asked me whether I wanted to come to Australia at all. And I just was recalling the anecdote when I was a young Piotr. And it was the first grade. I was between 7 and 8, because then we were living in our grandma's apartment. My parents were building a small house. And I was the smallest in the class, wearing glasses. So you can imagine it was not a very easy time at school with the other colleagues. So when they were going to play football, I was going to the library. And then I remember I asked my grandma, when I finished the book, I would like to go to Australia. And she told me, we can't go to Australia for two reasons. First of all, it's too expensive. It was 1980. Grey, Poland, before the martial law, communist regime, and limited supplies and everything. So it was too expensive, the first thing. And second, because she was in the political resistance during the war and after. She said we wouldn't get a passport, maybe only within the communist bloc, but not to the Western world. And I said, okay, well, life's tough. I can watch Australia and other countries through TV when possible. And I just forgot. And when I graduated university in Torun, I didn't know what to do with myself. So I fortunately got a scholarship in the Central European University in Budapest. I also studied there, and then it forced me that either I will give back the stipend, which was relatively expensive, or I will work for the public administration. And I joined the ministry, those days Ministry of the Interior. I joined the, let's say, European track, European Union accession process, and so on and so forth. And one thing led to another, that I was going through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to Brussels to work there. Met my wife, we got kid, and because of my wife's career and with marriage, normal thing, you have to make compromises. So the idea was that perhaps then never ever I would be able to go somewhere beyond Europe. And when I got when I was asked 2024, would you like consider, and those days I was dealing with Arctic and Antarctic policy, and then when I was asked, would you consider to go somewhere warmer, because I was so much limited myself in my mind to Europe, I was thinking, I don't know where I could go. Maybe Western Balkans, maybe Greece. And they told me we would see you in a Consulate General in Sydney, and I was like, no, it's not taking place. This whole the idea, and then the story, which is real with my grandma, maybe not with the details, but I still remember the conversation with her. It was like, no, it was magical. We had a tough, maybe not that tough, but we had a serious conversation with my son and my wife. Because he was graduating the high school, he needed to have 1 year, and then he said, okay, he can come with me, study over here, because my wife is academic, she can come over for some sabbatical and so on and so forth. So, okay, let's give a shot. Now it's changed a bit because my son gave up the idea of studying in Australia, and he joined the Polish university. So it's a bit different. But still, even if we are separated for some time, I feel privileged being here because, first of all, it's a beautiful country. Secondly, because it's so much work that I can do in the middle. Like you mentioned, I was in Perth, I'm going to Melbourne, and I will be going somewhere else. This is something I don't mind, and I know it's important for the people that the consul is coming, visit them, acknowledge the work they do. And that's why I always very much of great admiration to our fellow citizens, how much they do for Poland in a very broad context. So I like it. I got lots of this positive feedback. And even being apart and separated from family, it's a great story. It's a professional story as well, because for me, I've never been in a consul. My career was more on, like I mentioned, European track, both European Union, let's say multilateral diplomacy, and then also bilateral one, but never consular affairs. So for me, it's also interesting because in this, part of my life, you have to learn some new things, which is also refreshing. And frankly speaking, I hope that my colleagues who are within, let's say, diplomatic or political diplomacy track wouldn't be offended. But having this compared, now I think that I would be happy to have my next posting also with consular affairs. It's very rewarding, sometimes very demanding. I remember one of my first experiences when I came was the earthquake in Vanuatu, and we have some Polish tourists stuck over there, and I was wakened very often in the night by family somewhere in Poland calling me, do you know about my daughter? And sometimes I knew, and they were so pleased. And so it was you can see the results very, very quickly. But also there's also very sometimes long and continuous work and support, how to convince, for instance, parents that it's useful to send kids to the Polish school. So you have to go to a number of meetings, repeat the arguments, why it's useful, why it's important. But it's a great professional and personal journey. So, and I'm also blessed with a great team. They have plenty of ideas. So the fact that we just expanding our social media for the moment, or for instance, or that we have this declaration of cooperation with PACC, came not from scratch. I'm smart, but not that smart, so I can't figure out everything. So it's good to have a team that also supports you, because then together we get stronger. So that's my story.
And you've mentioned the Polish language a couple of times in our discussion this morning. It's very, very important to mention the work that not a lot of people know that you do, that every month the Polish consulate hosts a Polish language session, and it's to stress how important that is, and how passionate you are about that, working with Evelina Elsmore from the State Parliament to bring that to life. And it's a very crucial, important part of the Polish diaspora.
Again, I mean, I think whatever business you are engaged with, it doesn't matter how well you are prepared and how great you are trained and how many degrees you have. You need also a certain amount of luck in your professional career. We also have this initiative that every month, like you said, we meeting with the club together with PACC. We have a link with Łódź, and we discuss different aspects of poetry in particular, which I'm not the big expert. I'm more on let's say, fiction writing, but I really admire the passion, people coming over and discussing poems and play with language and so on and so forth. So I would be happy to continue the project next year, maybe trying to make it a bit more attractive, not criticizing how it's organized, but just maybe bring additional element. I have an idea that maybe we can be able to screen something that we call Polish TV theater. So there is a play, the actors are recorded, and then we can be more or less like in the theater and watch on the screen, because we also have capacity. So then maybe something connecting with the real work on the language, and then see the performance, which we're often connected with poetry. And then we'll be thinking about something else, maybe something else. But that's again great example that we can't do everything by our own, but it's crucial to find partners, reliable partners, with ideas that we can merge, and then everybody is gaining something.
And speaking about the arts, I understand that you are a massive music fan and big into CDs and vinyl. Tell us about that. You're not like a secret Taylor Swift fan or something, are you? Or?
No, it's something. I think it's something with me when it comes to collecting something. I have a tendency to collect stuff. My wife sometimes is criticizing me because she says I have too many items and too many different collections. But when it comes to music, I think it started when I was in primary school. Also, music for us in the 80s was a certain window to the world. It's not only Western, but was mostly Western. I can't recall that I was listening so much to the Eastern Bloc music. And then we were fortunate enough in the Polish public radio. There were what we called evenings with the newly published record, and you have the journalist that was describing a lot about the artist. And I was more on radio than TV, and maybe it started then. And once you start a certain collection, you just notice that you have a habit. You can't resist. Oh, it's a nice record. I need it. I know that you can now download almost everything, and you can have the music online. But it's also the issue of having an object that you can touch. You can read the booklet. You can feel. You can just put it in. And I promised myself when I was coming over here that I just brought only a few CDs. That apart from that, I would be looking for interesting new Australian music, which I didn't know, because obviously I know certain bands and singers, but the market is much bigger. So when I would be coming, I would be just doing only the digital version. And then, if you look at my shelf, it's already 60, right? And it's a year. And I don't have so much time to go shopping. But still, yeah, that's, I have already about 2,000 CDs and 200 vinyls. So. And I think it will be growing. So I hope that my wife is not watching this interview, because she might be scared what I will bring from Australia.
When I was doing my research on you, I believe your nickname is Diesel.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that. There's obviously a good story behind that.
The nickname has been given by my friend, who I know since we know each other when we were 15. We were in high school together, and he was my best man when I was getting married. So we know a bit already. And he gave me this. He gave me this name. He said that he's much taller than me, but he said once that, you might be small, but you are like a diesel, like a very rough diesel tractor or whatever, that you can put terrible oil, or you can put even water and some sand, and it will be still working and rolling even in the mud and in the rain and uphill. Because I have this tendency that, whenever I have a goal or objective, whatever the conditions might be, I stick to that, and so you don't have to be. And for me, as I mentioned the story when I was a kid, being the smallest in the class and so on, I never thought about myself that I'm strong, because within the competition with the bigger boys, I was always losing. Not everybody is perfect, so that's my inability. I said, no, you're strong. You're like a diesel. You will be rolling. So that's the story. And then it was not that this nickname came 20 years ago. It was like a few years back, but I liked it. So even my Instagram profile is Diesel Down Under. That's me.
You're going from speaking with your grandmother at 7 or 8 years old to landing in Australia. We speak funny, we drink, we smoke, we swear, we eat Vegemite. Was Australia how you pictured it?
I think that most of the people that are going to Australia are scared about sharks, snakes, spiders. Then on the opposite side you have kangaroos and koalas. But nevertheless, you're threatened about certain species. I haven't been ever picturing Australia with one species, because never ever anyone told me. I saw the kangaroos, I saw the koalas, I saw the brown snake already. I had my huntsman in the balcony, and it's fine. I don't mind. It doesn't mean that I play with them, but I'm not scared. But I remember when I was surprised. One of the first nights over here, when I was sitting at the previous table, with my door to the balcony opened, because it was warm and I didn't used to the fact that I need to use the air conditioning, and I like the open windows. I don't do it now. With the angle of my eye, I had some movement noticed. I said, what's going on the floor? And just looked, and it was a cockroach like this. And then they told me, they just fly. Now I know, but then it was pretty quick. I couldn't find. I know what's that actually? What kind of animal? I just throw it away. And then I asked my team and said, "Oh, it's a cockroach. The real owner of the land." And this was a big surprise. But if you are interested in traveling or in the world whatsoever, you have certain images in your head. So Harbour Bridge. Sydney Opera House. I haven't seen Outback yet, but Pacific Ocean and animals and so on. So that's that was not surprising in terms of a structure, but nevertheless it was surprising. Maybe it's because also of a distance that when I pictured myself, I'm just walking by these places, or I touch the kangaroo and I just give him or her some grass, or for instance, my first ever solo Christmas was in Australia. But I remember I was, because everybody here's with the families, I was the one who was sitting in the office the latest. I just closed all the stuff, and then I decided, okay, what shall I do? I wouldn't do my Christmas Eve dinner by myself. So I decided I go for a walk. And I just took the bus. I went to Coogee, and then from Coogee, for the first time in my life, I was walking down Bondi Beach and then coming back. And when I was standing there, and as I said, being alone, my family's there, looking in the Pacific, it was sunny, you can hear the waves, 16,000 kilometers-ish from Europe, from the northern hemisphere. Obviously, I would like to spend it with my family, obviously, but still, it was fun. And maybe it's like a I wouldn't say the end, because I'm not going to think about myself like the end of my journey, professional or personal, but still the story of with my grandma, with a young Piotr from Marlborough, ending up here, it's still sort of
Surreal?
surreal. Yeah, that's a good word. I think it's sort of surreal. So, yeah, that's my Australia.
Thank you very much for your time, Consul General. It's been an honour to be welcomed into your home this morning and spend some time with you and learn all about you. Thank you again for your time, and let's get the plane to Melbourne for the festival.
Thank you. I look forward. But it was very, and thank you, Stephen, for the interview, for the proposal to have it. It was a nice, refreshing, in a way, discussion, because I had to go to my past experiences, a real past and the recent in Australia, and it was nice. Nice journey, I would say.
Good.
Talking to you. Thank you very
I'm
much.
glad.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Cool.